Welcome to Sriram IAS Academy in this Unacademy platform. My name is Laila Ignatius. I've been taking classes for UPSC student for the past 15 years. And the way how we are going to start the batch. And this is a demo class. And in the previous demos, so far we have discussed some kind of topics. So now onwards, I'm planning to do certain things that the way how UPSC asked some kind of questions in the past year and how the way in future there may be a possibility from my point of view. Based on that, we can able to discuss one or two questions continually. So based on that, a particular topic and aspect regarding that particular topic will help students in various way to write and enrich their answers in various ways. Okay, good. These are all our topic. You can able to use the Stiram code in order to get the benefit in academic flow. So now this is a topic that the comparison between Kautilya and Machiavelli. And you know very well the way how UPSC asked question in this area of Arthasastra or Machiavelli's principles and all. But there is a possibility for now and then UPSC will go into the nature of the comparison of various thinkers and various method in various optional paper. So now this is the comparison I thought bringing here in this political science. So when I'm comparing Kautilya and Machiavelli, there is always a possibility in terms of time and phase wise. Kautilya is more senior than Machiavelli, no doubt in that one. But generally, the way how some people are considering, they are having a mindset of a xenocentrism. On the basis of that, they will always give consideration to the Western thought process than Indian political thought process. The best example I can able to say Mr. Pandit Nehru, in his book Discovery of India, also he specifically made this arrangement. So when I'm looking into the concept of Pandit Nehru in his book Discovery, so very specifically he told that the way how Machiavelli need to be considered as the person into the nature of the Kautilya need to consider as an Indian Machiavelli. But in terms of time perspective, Machiavelli is very young and Kautilya is much senior. But the way how people usually give ideas to comparison to important to the Western political thought process through their xenocentric mindset. So this was the night. But in the recent past, Upendra Kaur is also in her book Political Violence in Ancient India. She very specifically suggested that you can't able to call Machiavelli or you can able to call Kautilya as an Indian Machiavelli because in terms of time perspective, but you can call Machiavelli as an Indian Kautilya. That will be the correct way to call one person. So in this way, when I'm looking into the concept, like in terms of time perspective and space perspective and sphere perspective also, I can able to see that Kautilya is far more better than the person like Machiavelli, and Kautilya at the ancient time and Machiavelli just started his perspective at the end of medieval age and the beginning of modern era. He initiated his own thought process. So in this way, in terms of time perspective, I can able to divide and I can able to go into two classifications. But there is always a scope for improvement in terms of various similarities I can able to talk about Machiavelli with Kautilya or differences. On the basis of that, I can able to go for conclusions also. So in this perspective, a question may come any direction in a general manner of positive comparison or negative comparison, and what are the various conclusion a student can able to come into by the way completely analyzing Kautilya and Machiavelli. So in this nature, when I'm looking into the various positiveness similarities between Kautilya's and Arthasastra, so the way how the person like Kautilya and Arthasastra, by the way how they give much importance to their own motherland from the situation where they lived exactly. On the basis of that, generally these two people also gave consideration to the importance of foreign policy on one perspective. On the basis of that, the invasion of foreign countries and the way how the consolidation of motherland against the enemies and how the way through this perspective a king and government and state need to provide important to the well-being of every individual within a society. So in this perspective, both the people act like an advisor. Based on that, they started giving their advising the king and prince in this perspective. So in this manner, when I'm looking into Machiavelli and comparison with the Kautilya, and the way both are saying that what are the means it may be. The king is the person or the prince is the person need to use all the utilization of those methods in order to come for the conclusion or in order to achieve some kind of desirable end is the other important thing we need to consider. So, in this perspective, the way how Machiavelli's king or the prince, the way how they are using certain things, on the basis of that, we can easily come for the conclusion that how these things are very, very important. We can able to say that the utilization of those kind of principles and all here. And apart from this, the most important thing, when I'm looking into this perspective, the way how Machiavelli was very particular about one concept, that when I'm comparing politics and ethics, that is a concept in political philosophy. The comparison of politics and ethics in terms of political philosophy, the philosophy is a kind of idea, is completely on the basis of the value system and value ridden. On the basis of that, we can able to differentiate a political science into the nature of political philosophy. The way how political science give much importance to the empiricalism and empirical method, and the way how value systems are normative methods are more important in philosophical perspective. In this perspective, Machiavelli is saying that the king is a personality. When I'm connecting with him in terms of polity, then there is always a method that politics and ethics cannot coexist together. So there is a possibility that ethics need to be separated from politics. Politics is an unethical mean. Even when I'm looking into the concept of Kautilya, the way how in order to connecting with this principle, he gave the four upayas, the Samadhan, Danda Bhet. These are all the various method. On the basis of that, the king can able to achieve, achieve the desirable result in his constituency. It's a kind of idea, both the people. So what are the means? All the possible means the king and prince need to use. Then when I'm looking into the concept of foreign policy, the Kautilya, the way, as well as the Machiavelli, both are saying that the invasions are always necessary. The expansionist nation of the country through the imperialistic perspective is a nature of the king. On the basis of that, both the thinkers are saying that the invasive foreign policy is a necessary point. On the basis of that, you can able to expand the nature of the king and as well as country and all. And apart from this, when you are going to look into the idea of the management of power, that is another important thing. So the management of power is the most important objective of governance. And how the way it is going to handling the part of corruption and all. So while handling the power management perspective, and power management perspective is an instrumental idea to maintain the concept of the particular objective of a particular governance. And while doing so, the governance need to handle certain perspective of eliminating the aspect of corruption, eradicating the absence of corruption, handling the methods and tools of corruption. So based on that, the power management is an idea the thinker like Machiavelli as well as Kautilya, they discuss inside. And other than that, the way how when I'm comparing a philosopher king or other various kings of the Western political thought from the Plato's and Socrates' point of view, sometimes they will give the consideration that the king should be on the basis of the benevolency. So when I'm looking into the perspective of Arthashastra as well as Machiavelli, they are saying that benevolent welfare is a normal mean, but while doing so, the ruler should be into the nature of the iron hand methodology, the iron steel framework. We will say that bureaucracy about it. You won't bend before anyone. The same way the iron hand rule is a type of methods the kingship need to practice in order to enforce and emphasize their authority and power management within a society. So this is the way the king can able to continue their existence, their dynasty and other various perspective related to the idea of the kingship. So in this manner, when I'm looking into the idea, The way how a very realistic nature the person like Kautilya utilized in his Arthasastra. On the basis of that, we can able to say from the people's comparison, political thought process comparison and all, we can able to see the coexistence and correlation of ideas of Machiavelli aligned with the principles of Kautilya, always a possibility, and the most important thing in this perspective we are going to discuss in coming. So when I'm going to look into the differences perspective, similarities so far discussed. And when I'm going for the idea of differences, the various differences, the most important thing is that for Machiavelli in his book Prince and Kautilya in his Arthasastra, and the way how, when we are talking about Machiavelli's concept of religion and Kautilya's principles of spirituality and all, on the basis of that, the prince is a personality always above the religion, is a type of mindset at the end of medieval age Machiavelli brought in this world. But when I'm looking into Kautilya from his own idea, the Dharma principle, Danda principle, which also led to the idea of the Buddhist Dhamma principle and all. So Kautilya is clearly saying that the prince is the person, the king is the person always under the perspective of dharma, because king need to also follow the virtue of dharma. That is the most important thing. So he is not beyond dharma. He is not beyond the concept of the good principles inside a country to govern the people and all. So in this perspective, there is a huge difference between the religion is below the king and the dharma is above everyone. King also need to obey those rules and regulations. So on the basis of that, when I'm continuing, the way how both the scholar advises prince in various way in the previous similarity. But when I'm seeing Machiavelli, he always go for the consideration of the generic advices only, not beyond that one. But when I'm going for the perspective of Sarthasastra through Kautilya or Chanakya with Vishnugupta, I can able to say the precise way the Sarthasastra through that Kautilya desired and predicted various situational things. On the basis of that, he really empathized those kind of matter in order to provide a very precise methodology in the name of advices to the king is a best methodology. When I'm comparing with the Machiavelli and Kautilya, I can, it's a generic version, but this is a very precise medicine. And I'm going further. So the way how individuals who want to study about the knowledge of statecraft, how the way the statecraft is going to happen, how the administration is going to happen. So in this perspective, people will say that Kautilya is far better than a person like Machiavelli, or Kautilya's Arthasastra best than the area of Machiavelli's Prince. So for that, I need to go into the perspective of the Max Weber, who talks about the idea of the Western bureaucracy and all. So in his book Politics as a Vocation, the way how Max Weber discuss about Kautilya and Machiavelli. So in this way, Max Weber is saying that Kautilya is a kind of personality. Since he is a Western scholar, he is a kind of personality, behaved more Machiavellian. Then, even when I'm seeing the principles of Machiavelli, which doesn't have that much Machiavellian methods, but Kautilya is having the person. Because in always the thought process that the Western, among themselves, they will give consideration to their own scholars and thinkers only. It is a kind of ethnocentric mindset. Generally, the political thought process, the political ideologies or political thinkers will give their culture, their people always superior than other. In this perspective, even a person like Max Weber is clearly saying that Machiavellian perspectives are more with Kautilya than the real Machiavelli. So in this manner, the way how Kautilya was considered by the Western scholars that he was more realistic than Machiavelli, the way how the realistic and realism is a kind of idea, Machiavelli want to use it, but in practicality, Kautilya utilized those realism in various ways to understand the ground reality on the basis of the methods of the bilateralism or mutual respect and all. So in this way, the way how Max Weber and all looking about the Kautilya and his king. When I'm seeing the aspect of Kautilya's king and Machiavelli's princess and all, the way how the Kautilya's king comparing with the princes, has appeared always into the category of the harmless. He is a king from Kautilya's perspective, is a constitutional slave. It is not unlike the Plato's king of philosopher. The constitutional methods, the constitutional slaves, the way how the king is giving ultimate importance to the value system and welfare of the people. People's life is more important for kings. King need to sacrifice for the benefit of the people. In this perspective, the king is more benevolent comparing with the Plato's philosopher king or the prince of Machiavelli. So the best way Kautilya is describing about the nature of king when I go for a comparison with the Plato's philosopher king or Machiavelli's prince. So in this way, we can able to say when I'm going for the similarities and dissimilarities, the way how lot of circumstances and ideas and other various perspectives. On the basis of that, I can able to go into the conclusion that there is always a possibility that the similarities and dissimilarities, but the very necessary point is that the way how the king, how Kautilya, and the connection between king and Kautilya, when I'm comparing with the way how the connection and association with the prince and Machiavelli, it was not up to that level, but Kautilya really connected with the king and gave the advices. Even he acted like a kingmaker. On the basis of that, he modulated and moderated the idea of kingship with the help of the various perspectives in reality wise and real examples wise and the real practical experience wise. But when I'm seeing the person like Machiavelli, it's kind of a bookish view. He wrote about the king and prince in his Prince, and it is not much effect and impact upon the medieval society or the beginning of the modern society around 1600 inside the Western political scenario. So this way, when I'm going further, and the way how we are planning to start some kind of batches from 10th to July. The anthropology optional is going to start in Academy with our Sriram IAS Academy. So whoever want to join, use the Sriram's code and get the benefit and all. And as a conclusion part, this is also very necessary thing. When I'm looking into the perspective of the conclusion, when a question comes in this manner, comparative methods. So I'm saying that the positive perspective in terms of similarity, the negative perspective in terms of differences and dissimilarities, and what method in a general manner I can able to come for a conclusion when I'm seeing the perspective and thought process and ideas of Machiavelli and Kautilya. So in this way, when I'm going to look into the concept of Kautilya and his approaches, the approaches of Kautilya towards his philosophy is always on the basis of people-centric only. He gave ultimate importance to people. The welfare of the people is the welfare of the king. The king is a constitutional slave. But when I'm seeing Machiavelli, it always, the prince is the most important thing. And everybody need to sacrifice. So the king is the center point of Machiavelli and people welfare is a centralism inside the area of Kautilya. On the basis of that, Kautilya want to promote the concept of the Yoga Shema. This is the most important thing. So the way how the Yoga Shema is a kind of idea into the nature of the peaceful enjoyment of prosperity is a kind of thing. The peaceful enjoyment of prosperity. A kind of idea. But when I'm going to look into Machiavelli, and Machiavelli doesn't have much importance towards the citizen-centric ideal. Hence, his thought processes are completely in and around the prince and the king and their welfare, their level of comfortable zone and all. But he never went beyond that one into the level of the bottom of the society. He only looked into the area of the superstructure from the perspective of Marx and all. So, from this perspective, when I'm looking into the concept of Kautilya's Arthasastra, the way how when I'm looking into the existence of knowledge and the way Arthasastra completely shifted those knowledge borders and outlines on the basis of that into the nature of outward perspectives. But when I'm seeing the Machiavelli, Comparing with the Machiavelli, the way how Aristotle discuss about the knowledge perspective, and the way how explicitly mention about this knowledge perspective, when I'm seeing with Machiavelli, you cannot be able to come close to the ideas of Arthashastra. There is no match and comparison when I'm looking the knowledge perspective of Arthashastra's idea aligning with the principles of Machiavelli. No comparison, no match into the nature of Kautilya. So, in this manner, when I'm going to look into the Kautilya's perspective of the king and the Machiavelli's perspective of the prince and all, you cannot be able to match the way how the Kautilya describe about the various nature of the kingdom and kingship, and the way how the neighborhood country, friend's friend and friend's enemy, and expansionist nature, foreign policy perspective, good governance and corruption and espionage system and other various perspectives. Based on that, you cannot be able to match Aristotle's king, Arthasastra's king, Chanakya's king, anywhere with the concept of Machiavelli's prince and all. But in this way, in what way I am going to make Kautilya is unique? When I am going to look into the Arthasastra, the way how the Arthasastra is also talking about the various treaties on the basis of the three important perspectives. So, when I'm looking into the treaties concluded by Arthasastra on the basis of that, the first and foremost important thing I can able to say the Artha Nidhi is a kind of idea. Artha Nidhi is a kind of idea. Based on that, we can able to go into. Okay, so the Artha Nidhi is a kind of idea. So Artha Nidhi is a way how it is connecting with the economic policy with the help of the prosperity as well as the principle and policy making of the government. So Nidhi is a kind of things is interconnected with the growth perspective or the taxation perspective or export import perspective and other various methodology the governments are going to practice on the basis of that how the way they are going to induce the material incentives and all with the effective manner to enhance the efficiency to achieve the effectiveness on the basis of a less effective economy that are the most important thing. Based on that the wastages need to be prevented and methods the government need to think about the future perspective and all to taking care of a natural calamity or man-made calamity and other various diseases perspective and all. This manner only Artha Nidhi want to create some kind of policy to taking care of the people from king's point of. And Dandan Nidhi is another most important thing they proposed. Dandan Nidhi is a kind of things, it's not regarding perspective of economic growth. It is an administration of justice from the point of view of Arthasastra. So justice comes into force, it want to reduce the error and all inside. And the way how those things are going to discuss about the way how the governments are going to exist, and this is the most the ethical principality or the very necessary point. On the basis of that the efficient law we can able to make, and we're going to discuss about the way how the workers and all and their property, and apart from this the way how the government is going to monopolize or government is going to regulate the monopoly and all on the other various things and all, how the way the welfare of the people, especially women and children and other various perspective of labor welfare and all will come under the category of Dandaniti. And Videsh Nidhi is another various perspective we can able to say. In terms of the perspective of the country's security, first the economic growth, then the justice in order to manage the politics, and Dandan Nidhi and the Videsh Nidhi on the basis of the national security. I can able to compare the same perspective of Kautilya in the modern administration. I can able to come as really a wonder things that if I'm comparing foreign policy of India, it is always having the three important core principle of national interest in terms of and the national interest is on the basis of national development in terms of economic perspective and national stability in terms of political perspective and national security in terms of military perspective. So development Artha Nidhi and stability Danda Nidhi and security Videsh Nidhi is a kind of idea even till today. Very relevantly the Indian foreign policy makers or Indian foreign policy makers at the very beginning onwards will made their foreign policy for India. They kept it these three important core principles, and Arthashastra is also talking about based on that I can able to say the relevancy of Arthashastra even in the contemporary situation, a country like India, the way how they are keeping the Arthanidhi and Dandanidhi and Videsh Nidhi aligned with the principles of international political environment. This is the best example we can able to see. So in this Videsh Nidhi perspective, the way how other various perspectives of the national security and the way how the military strategical things, the treaty with the enemies, treaty with the friends and all coming into the category. So based on that, when I'm comparing Machiavelli's perspective, in what way he discussed and suggested about the various things of king and its nature. So the king is a person who can able to change his nature and status. On the basis of that, the way how he was going to the category of the roving bandit into the category of the stationary bandit. So on the basis of that, Machiavelli is saying that the king, the way how he need to appear into the nature of ethical principality and all. On the basis of that, the ethicality is a kind of idea is not much, but apart from this, the way how the maximization principle, on the basis of that, they only talk about end result rather than the way how you are achieving the end. Means are not important. End. That was the time at the beginning I told ethics and politics should not go together from the perspective of Arthashastra or very particularly Machiavelli. So in this manner, when I'm considering the way how the prince is a personality is happen inside, based on that, when I'm comparing the ideas of Arthashastra and Machiavelli, for example, the people like the Roger Boschi, Henry Kissinger and the recent past, and Max Weber and all, the way how they really compared the perspective of Artha and Machiavelli, on the basis of that, they came to the conclusion that there is always a perspective. Machiavelli's prince I am comparing with Arthashastra. And they came with an idea of comparing the candlelight with the sunlight. Machiavelli is a candlelight and Arthashastra is a sunlight. Kautilya is a kind of personality. He practically utilized everything on the basis of that. A action-oriented policy he created. But when I'm going to look into the idea of Machiavelli, it is theoretical perspective. As an advisor, he wrote something through his prince and in not practicality, he never directly involved. He never gave advices in real time. But Arthashastra, through that Kautilya, gave advices to people that he ended the Nanda dynasty. He brought Chandragupta Maurya and his sons all got the approval pen. On the basis of that, even till today, people are considering Artha and Chanakya. He was popularly called as Chanakya, the kingmaker. So that is another most important thing. So based on this perspective in overall view, we cannot able to compare in any perspective in terms of time and other various. Some people who had an idea of ethnocentric and xenocentric mindset, they will say we can call Kautilya as Indian Machiavelli, or some people with the national centric mindset, they will say that Machiavelli is an Indian Kautilya and all. In reality, always a consideration in terms of time and perspective, Machiavelli is far younger than Artha and Kautilya, and Kautilya's perspective was in real time, practical way, and nowhere you can able to connect it with Machiavelli and all. Machiavelli gave the theoretical idea in terms of bookish view through his book Prince, and Arthashastra through that Kautilya gave a practical approach for the king, and he really not only wrote those things, he advised the king, he modified the kingdom and created the dynasty. On the basis of that, you cannot able to compare in various perspectives. Both are in different perspectives, in different sphere. They are excel in their own ideas and thought process, but in terms of comparison, it is not wise to say this person is superior than other. Within their respective sphere, they really acted well on the basis of the way they gave advices and all in terms of government and society and religion and justice and other various perspectives. Okay, fine. So we will meet in the next demo. Thank you all. Jai.